All right, so welcome to a Pocket Paragons Roundtable. We're here with Brian McKay, game designer. I'm Chris Solis, the producer and lead playtester.
Yep, Nick Rosner. Hello.
Nick Rosner is here.
Yeah.
So Nick, tell us about playtesting. I'm just kidding.
No.
So
you don't know a thing about that.
This is a conversation about just, I guess, going into the designs of making a character. Is that what you wanted here?
So I'll start. It took us 7 years to make this game.
Yeah.
Right? And I know you might be like, how did it take 7 years to make a game that's 7 cards? Right? And there was a lot of different shapes. It was different things. You try different things. And at one point, we were just like, hey, this is a shorter game. And then Pocket Paragons came into existence. But what I really want to go into is the design philosophy on why a game with 7 cards like this works and why it feels like a fighting game. What did you do to make it balanced? I want to talk about the design. I want to know everything about these 7 cards. So I guess we can start with what are the 7 cards a character has?
Yeah, so each character has the same 7 symbols. I mean, there are exceptions, especially the Rivals of Aether box is the biggest one to that. But having each character have the same basic shape of how they play really makes the game a lot easier to pick up and understand and make them feel different. If they have the same pieces, but the pieces do different things, it really shows off the differences. But at the heart, there is kind of a rock, paper, scissors system here, and that we baked it right into the symbols. I mean, a lot of people haven't noticed that, but the strength is a fist, like rock. The wings make a pair of scissors, and the book is made of paper. Yeah. And they interact with each other in that way. I think the real spice of the game, though, is the execute and rest mechanic. Without that, it's not Pocket Paragons. It's that whole system of running out of cards and choosing when to rest and kind of predicting your opponent. I think once that mechanic was put in, it really became a game. This is all well and good, but this is what brings the tension. This is what brings the exciting moments and the strategic decisions. These 3 cards, the weapon, defend, and rest, also sort of form a rock, paper, scissors triangle, just like these 3 cards, where weapon clearly beats rest, as you instantly win the game. Rest beats defend. This is the reason that almost every defend card says, if you block damage, do something.
Right.
It's just for those situations to make rest better against defend. Defend was, probably the most powerful card for the longest time because it could stop anything. If you got your opponent's best card, they were out their best card and they got nothing for it. So having just a little something to make defend a little weaker.
So you got a rock, paper, scissors system with those 3 on the bottom and a hard counter circle. And then these over here are soft counters, almost like another way.
Yeah, and you're not just playing these 3 cards against these 3 cards and these 3 cards against these 3 cards. You end up with situations like this where you're not countering each other, and that's fine. If the countering was happening all the time, I guess it wouldn't feel as special. It would be more of an expected thing, and it would make the game take a lot longer. So having normal results.
You might get a counter randomly here and there, but for the most part, if you want to counter, because the system, you gotta think it through.
You really got to know when to hit it. Because really, like you had mentioned, it's pretty straightforward and simple, but it's really about reading people completely. And the fact that they're all the same cards, kind of, at least in terms of their symbols and what they generally do, means you always know what they can play, and you can counter them. It's good. You can read them and do a rock, paper, scissors move, only if you really in there. And that's also, I think, what makes Pocket Paragons great, because you're in the head. That's it.
So effectively, if the cards have no text, it would still function.
Yeah. And, a lot of cards, I wanted to reward countering even more, because it feels good and it's an exciting moment. So a lot of the game's keywords key off of countering your opponent. And it's a way to make the cards feel special without adding a lot of complexity to them. If you take a card that has Vicious, which is a keyword that says if you counter your opponent's ability, your card does double damage, and that's the only text on there, it still creates exciting moments that are like, oh, I got you for double 3 damage. That's amazing. But in a lot of situations, the text doesn't do anything. but it doesn't make the card feel vanilla. It doesn't make the card feel boring, even though that text doesn't come into effect most of the time. These keywords, pierce, like, oh, you blocked me, but hey, I still got 1 damage in. Like, it doesn't come up all the time. It doesn't come up often at all. And even when it does, it's 1 damage, but at least it makes the card feel special. And there's lots of things like, the piercing is good against defend. So it's another kind of soft counter to this. There's effects like this one, where if the enemy played agility, attack +1. So now there's another angle of attack here. If you know your opponent's going to play agility, you have a second card to punish it.
Yeah.
And again, this is a line of text that doesn't come up often at all. But at least it's something. The card doesn't feel empty.
Yeah. And it's that sort of almost gentle combination of just, to me, a lot of these feel like this combination of things is what makes this character interesting. And then you have the ultimate on top of that. It kind of pushes them in a certain direction. So I think to people looking at it, it can look very simple. So, it just has 1 line of text. How's it any different? But it's been calculated.
Yeah.
The kit has a feel towards it and how you play it. Even having just those few keywords, it still already does a lot.
Yeah. The keywords also pull a lot of weight. One thing that's subtle in a lot of character kits, not this one specifically, but what this character's best card is their intelligence. It's a 3 damage hit. I mean, it's their affinity, which is printed here. So agility is good against intelligence. It counters it. So a lot of these characters, whatever their best card is, the card that counters the card that counters their best card, if that makes sense, the rock to protect the paper usually has the countering punish on it. So this is my strongest card, and if you play the thing that beats my strongest card, I have a punish for that card.
Even on top of its counter.
Yeah.
Yeah, on top of its counter, it has a counter within a counter.
Yeah, so you'll find on a lot of characters that their best card over here is protected by a vicious or a stun or something. It doesn't show up. I mean, it's a very subtle thing, but it's in most of the characters in this game.
It's one of those things is I know I've done that before, but I also didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
Now they explain it, I'm like, yeah, of course I've done that. But it was like an interaction that just felt organic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the reason we put affinities on these cards is so that you have some kind of idea, what your opponent's best card is, what they're likely to play on the first turn. So do you want to play your most powerful card on the first turn? Or is that too obvious?
Yeah.
And it just gives you a starting point to begin that yomi, that line of thinking of, do I do the obvious plan or do I do the thing that beats the obvious plan?
Yeah.
Yeah, regarding first order strategy, like you might think like, okay, well, I read my kit, I should do this, I should do that. That's what the affinity symbol's for, right? I can just immediately shut it down even if I don't know your kit. But if I don't, or you just let me, then I can do a colossal amount of damage.
Yeah.
I was playing my buddy who was at the time convinced, it was Jake, right? Who was convinced that it was like, oh, it's pretty random, right? I'm like, well, I'll just do my first order strategy because you're not trying to counter it. And I 5-0'd him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean...
because he didn't try to think about the patterns.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, the characters, first order strategy. They have a clear game plan where if they play these cards in the right order, it's the best plan. It's how you put out the most damage or the quickest path to victory. But if you follow that strategy directly, you get countered, you get shut down. Your big attack gets blocked, and your next big thing gets countered, and you're dead.
What if the rest is a big part of the game. What if I just, don't and just hit you with all my attacks?
Yeah, so part of the game's balance, because the rest and weapon is kind of the heart and soul of the game, I wanted to make sure that in every game that moment came up. And the way to do that is to make sure that no character could kill an opponent before they played rest. That all the damage in your kit, and so we've got the Pyromancer here as an example. The Pyromancer is a very aggressive character, and moving the ultimate aside, their kit does 1, 2, 4, 7, even the defend does 1 point of damage. So this is 8 total damage, but that's not 10. And no character can do 10 damage without playing rest. Except under, there's very rare situations.
Countering enough times to pull an ultimate.
Countering enough times, big vicious, under certain situations, sure, it's hypothetically possible. But for a standard game of Pocket Paragons, you can't play all your cards and kill someone without resting. So the fact that you have to rest at some point brings this moment into the game. And then that was a very important design tenet of the game. Even the most aggressive characters, like this one, this character does 8 damage. Other aggressive characters will do somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 damage too. The less aggressive characters will do 5 or 6 damage in their kit.
Yeah, and again, that's if I play all my cards, which I won't because I don't want to die, right?
Right.
So I want to. You're probably looking at 2-3 rests around.
Yeah, and a character has 10 life, but there are certain other factors in play, like the defend. If I block your 3 damage attack, well then it's like I've had 13 health instead of 10. If I block your 3 damage attack and heal 1, then it's like I have 14 damage. And it's a way to artificially extend the game while keeping the life total low. The characters could have had 20 health or whatever, but 10 is a nice, easy number, and the characters have that secret extra health through good use of the defend. The Pyromancer does damage on the defend instead of healing, so the Pyromancer doesn't have that effect of 1 extra health every time they block, but they have that 1 extra point of damage. So it's like they have less health overall compared to a character that has a healing defend, even though they both have 10 health.
Yeah. But again, as you said, the heart and soul is all that put in there, all of that careful strategizing. If you're not careful, and you can still get executed. So there's no way to just make a game infinitely long, or like the execute being there at all times means that your perfect strategy always it's actually a fail-safe in a way too. Like there's technically almost no character who could abuse it too much because you can just get executed.
Yeah. Yeah, and the reason that characters have, instead of these all being 2 damage, that it's weighted towards 1 ability kind of incentivizes you to want to rest to get back your better ability, which again brings in more of these exciting weapon rest moments. If you've got this 1 damage card, you still have a reason to play it. To buy yourself another turn to bait out your opponent's weapon. The weaker cards still have a role in the game and aren't just ignored.
Yeah, nothing's totally useless.
Yeah.
Especially since they can counter stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't know if it gets too far off topic, but kind of the thought process that Pocket Paragons is very similar in terms of fighting games. Some things that we had said that remind me of it is that having your bread and butter combo, right? In a let's say a 2D fighter, bread and butter combo. It's what you default to deal damage. You're used to it. You know how to do it. So the bread and butter can be that move, but if you rush in and you always do the exact, so you don't do any overheads, you don't do any sweeps, any kind of weird stuff to match.
You don't mix it up.
If there's no mix-ups, you're never going to get the bread and butter in. So that's kind of part of it. It just gives me fighting game vibes, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, take the Pyromancer's kit for example. You can play 3 damage into 2 damage into rest, and then the 3 damage into 2 damage. So that kills an opponent in 5 turns. But if you do it exactly that way every time, you're not going to get to kill your opponent in 5 turns.
They'll see it coming, they'll block it.
Yeah,
whatever.
One block shuts that down entirely, and suddenly you're playing rest with all these extra cards in your hand. And opening yourself up for vulnerable states.
So I've seen it in a lot of videos. I mean, I know why, but I remember when we first were making the game, we were thinking about the effectiveness of cards at different points, and then we found out why would you rest first turn? But then resting first turn is awesome.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that for a bit?
Yeah. So there is kind of 2 different axes to the game. There you have health, and then you have the 2 ways to win. You bring your opponent to 0 health, or you execute them. And characters kind of lean towards either the damage strategy, which I call the aggressive strategy, or the execution strategy, which I call the control strategy. And so to grab another character, for example, here we have Ixa from the right of the Aegis box. She has this ability here. You'll see this ability on a million other characters. It's 1 damage, and if you hit your opponent, they have to exhaust an ability. And so putting yourself ahead on cards, forcing them towards resting, because they have fewer cards in hand than you. This is a very common control card. Anytime you see a character with this card in their kit, they're usually geared towards playing a control role. And the reason I'm using Ixa for this example is because she has 2 of this card. And not only that, one of hers does 2 damage instead of 1. So this is the standard one, and this is a very powerful type of effect in this game.
Oh yeah.
To have 2 of them and to have more damage on it, like this is her thing, and this is really to hammer this theme home. Is that she wants to exhaust the enemy out of cards.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were mentioning earlier, Chris, about when cards are useful. These cards are useful as your opponent gets fewer cards in hand. Losing 1 card when you have 6 cards in hand isn't as bad as losing 1 card when you have 3 cards in hand.
Yeah.
So forcing your opponent into those 50-50 situations where they have rest and 1 other card in their hand is a great opportunity to kill them. And putting them into that situation more often is the way that these characters win their games.
Yeah, if you can get them in that, ideally you always get them in that situation. Against a good player, it will be very hard to get them there, but it can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like how characters too, like for example, this character has 2 exhausting abilities, and that's pretty straightforward, but it immediately informs how to play them. Like any one character, you could probably describe their strategy in like probably 1 sentence. Like any good fighting character should be like, you can fight it, but this is what they do.
Yeah,
no one's kit's too ridiculously complicated where it's not clear.
Yeah, looking at her kit compared to the Pyromancer, she has 5 damage as opposed to 8.
Right.
She's definitely at the lower end of the damage. Her block it heals because she wants to play that longer game. Her passive is just another effect that can help you exhaust cards. She's not winning with damage most of the time.
Right, or she's eking it out till,
Yeah. A lot of the time when these characters win through damage, it's because they've limited their opponent's options that they can just rack up that damage because they're safe to do so. This character also, another common theme with these controlling characters, her strength ability punishes rests. Because she's putting you into rest situations more often. If you don't get the full-on execute, I win the game, this is 3 damage now.
Right.
Just multiple ways to punish a resting player is a common theme with these kinds of characters.
Let's talk about ultimates. We have active ultimates, passive ultimates. What makes an ultimate? I remember there was builds of the game where we didn't have ultimates at all.
That's true. Ultimates were actually added fairly late into the game for a very, probably not the reason you'd expect. Ultimates they're fun because they're big and exciting and you get to do something cool. But the reason they were there is because I was trying to figure out the countering system. If I counter your card, what happens? What does that mean? The idea of putting it back in your hand seemed like a simple enough one where it's like, yeah, I hit you and you didn't hit me. But we were finding that sometimes you wanted to be countered because it left you with more cards in hand than your opponent. And putting yourself in the situation where you wanted to get countered to have an advantage was just bad gameplay.
Yeah.
And so I decided to tack on just another reward for countering your opponent. And that's where ultimates came in. You got energy, and that built you up to a card. And with a lot of ultimates that put a card into your hand, it helped to offset that disadvantage of countering your opponent and being down on cards. Originally, all characters just had a passive effect, just because it was the way for characters to do their kits in different ways. And then once the concept of energy and ultimates came along, the characters who had less interesting passives just lost them for ultimate abilities that were super moves.
We're themed more towards them.
Yeah.
I remember when the countering system, what actually happens was not there yet. I think there was a version where it just deleted the card and they didn't get bounced.
Yeah, that was too oppressive in that if I countered your card, it just went away forever, and I play my strength to counter your agility. Well, now I know that I can play my intelligence, and there's never anything you can do about it. And so once you got that first counter off, it puts you in such an advantageous position. Yeah. So the countering it and them not getting their card back was too good, but then countering it and putting it back in their hand was too weak. And so this was kind of a way to medium it out.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've of course seen all the iterations of this, and sometimes the core of the game, I think, has almost always been here. right? And then like it'll be some part of it's just not working, and then something comes out that kind of like it all makes sense as soon as you do it. Yeah. And I remember like when the counters came in, and it was like it counters, it bounces back to your hand. Oh, what do we do about that? Okay, hear me out. Ultimates or whatever, you know. And it was like, okay, energy. Okay, but that's too.
You get something when you counter it.
It's you know, it's not like I win this move or I win the game off of this. It's like you're working towards a win. But like stuff like that, and even I think the rest weapon dynamic were clicking moments. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, dude, it just works. I mean, or rather, it makes it feel complete and correct.
Yeah. The execute is really what turned it into the version of the game it is now. Back when this was a longer game and a team game, everybody had weapons like this, but the weapons all did double damage to resting players. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, if I weaponed you when you were resting, it was a big hit, but still one that you could recover from. And when I cut it down to this little 1v1 game, I'm like, what if it just ended the game? Does that work?
Yeah, it was real. I remember we were working on it for a while. It was like, I remember at one point you did one, and it was just a weapon that deals more damage. I'm like, I'm sorry, I think that's kind of boring, honestly.
It was boring. I took more damage. I don't care.
Yeah.
I remember characters had higher health, so like in terms of like, oh, I take 7, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I don't care.
It could have lost you the game, but you wouldn't realize that for another 15 minutes while you played out the game.
Right? Yeah. That exciting moment, it was like it's just lost like tears in the rain, you know? Like,
yeah. So yeah, 10 health. Wait, I remember thinking, I could lose right now.
And it really let weapons play a different role in the game. You know, when it was double damage, that means it had to go on to a high damage ability for it to be relevant. But now you can put execute on, you know, a 1 damage ability or even a 0 damage ability, and it's still a very useful card because it now, you know, can win the game. Being able to put it on a smaller card and let the other cards be more powerful really helped make it, that when you whiffed on the weapon, it actually was bad for you. That, I only did 1 damage when I could have done 3. Well, previously, if the weapon was a high damage thing, it's like, well, I'm going to play it no matter what because I want to hurt you.
Right.
So getting that dynamic in there really, really helped shape the game.
Yeah. It was a clicking, I think, aha moment.
A light bulb eureka.
Yeah, exactly. Like you get those ahas. But the thing that I think is important is that, like I said, like I mean, I've seen this so many times. The game wasn't designed around having ultimates that go off. It wasn't designed around. It was like designed to play, and then these things kind of like help move it forward in that direction. So it's got a strong core, in my opinion.
Yeah. That
it's not like it's just a game about blasting ultimates. Okay, that's cool, I guess, but this is more solid, I think.
Yeah, so the energy system adds, you know, so much to the game that I kind of feel bad for the characters that have passives, especially 0 energy passives. I mean, there's certain characters that have passives that just kind of set the rules for how they play, like Rowan from the Temporal Odyssey box, where he transforms the first time you counter it. And that's not really, I mean, it's an ability, but it's just kind of like a rule for him. And it's sad to have a character like that where you get energy for countering your card and playing rest, and it doesn't do anything for you. It feels bad. So, you know, going forward, I want to have more characters that, I want to make sure every character cares about energy. Because right now it's probably only about 75% of the roster that even cares about energy.
I think it's cool that some of them don't, but I think you're right that it's better if more do.
Yeah, I think a few characters can do that as an exception to the rule, but I want characters to care more about it. Even passives that have high energy, like Einar from the Aegis box. You know, once he has 3 energy, and you know, whenever you play a card, you get to ready all your other cards. Like, that's an exciting moment, even though it's a passive. Passives can be exciting like that.
100%.
But you know, like even this character, once she has 1 energy, her abilities gain stun. That's not really exciting. I mean, I could have just put stun on these cards. So going forward into future characters, I am trying to push them more towards caring about energy.
Yeah.
I'm even messing around with characters that have both ultimates and passives, so that the characters who have, you know, their rule-setting passives can still do that and still have something to care about their energy gains.
All that being said, by the way, I do think that still some players will generally appreciate having characters that don't have to rely too much on the ultimates. Like, they might like playing where the passive turns on and they go into that. I think some people just like that.
Yeah, and not everything needs to be higher complexity. And
So, who was the best character in the game?
who's the best character? That's tough.
Who's your favorite character?
Those are two very different questions.
Yeah.
My favorite character is probably the Time Bender. I think the Time Bender is just the greatest way to show someone the different things you can do with the system within just the 6 cards of a character's kit. You know, the different way you can play his cards out, the limitation of only being able to rest once.
Yeah, that's wild.
I mean, just the thematics of playing the different seasons and having them do different things. I think he's my favorite. I also like the Illusionist. The little mind game within a mind game of his guess a number mechanic is just so much fun. And getting to copy your opponent's abilities, there's a lot of fun things to do with that. I think those are my favorite characters. But most powerful?
I guess we're going to find out when.
I mean, that's true. I mean, this is just my opinion, and the wisdom of the crowds will hopefully prevail. You know, as more and more people play the game and more people talk on the Solus Game Studio Discord.
Discord plug link.
Link below in the description.
Like and subscribe.
But I'd probably have to say Quentin, the Guardian. He can play a very good offensive game. He can play a very good defensive game. His ultimate is very powerful.
Yeah.
And he's not a complex character. And that's a point I want to hammer home, that the complexity ratings on these characters are not power levels.
Yeah.
You can have very simple characters that are just very strong. You know, imagine an ultimate ability that just deals 5 damage. It's not flashy or anything. It's not complex, but it's good. I mean, it can be flashy. It's exciting.
Oh, yeah.
It can win you the game, but, you know, it's easy to understand.
Yeah, man, but again, also, the more complicated characters have more pieces, so they're going to be harder to read.
Fight against. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the complexity also goes, you know, it's not just how hard are they to play, it's how hard are they to play against.
Yeah.
You know, like the Time Bender with his strange looping, as the opponent, you really need to be aware of what he can do and where your options are. Playing against complex characters, it probably is even harder to play against them than to play as them in a lot of cases.
Right, because you might know the rules to beat them normally with the normal cards, and that's true, but they might gain some advantage out of something, or they're like, oh, hey, were you not paying attention to the fact that now you take damage when you do this or something like that? It's like,
yeah. So
in a way, you have to kind of be a 3-star player, right, to like play against them, I think.
What's your favorite character, Nick?
Probably Sato, specifically the Ocean Queen, specifically because of a few things here. Just her play style, you get in their head a lot of the times. You know, you got the Queen's Wrath, which in tournament mode is basically almost always hits like right off the bat. I'm gonna throw this into everything I can. You know, when you hit an opponent, you choose an ability symbol, and if they play that card, they take 2 unblockable damage. It just removes a card from their head that they're going to play.
Yeah.
Given you've taken control of their decision making, and if they choose to do it anyway, and you think that they're going to do that, then you punish them. You have to corner them.
I mean, if you get that 3 damage plus that other 2 damage, that's half their health in a move, and then her ultimate's really good
her
too.
Decree, the block all damage, and then Banish. She's to me a character who's like, the moves are good, but as a kit together, I really enjoy. She's my favorite character, but there's definitely a lot of characters that I really like too that are just fun to play.
She's probably my favorite piece of art in the set.
Yeah,
I know that wasn't the question, but she's so intimidating, and that's what I wanted her to be. You know, she's the main villain of the story, at least at the start. I wanted you to feel afraid when you were playing against her. Like, oh no, I might lose my best card. Oh no, I don't want to dare play this card to upset the queen.
Yeah.
I try to create that sense of fear in the mechanics of her card. She's very mean.
I think it reads well into the character, so definitely my favorite. What's your favorite character?
Oh, Jesus. I like Demate.
Oh, okay.
He's the guy that upgrades his cards.
Oh yeah.
Right? So when he gets a counter, one of your 3 abilities upgrade to level 2, you swap it out, and you want to upgrade all 3 cards and just crush it.
Yeah,
It's a pretty unique character, too.
The upgraded cards are very powerful too. I mean, they're basically ultimate level cards, except you just get to play them on the regular.
Right.
Yeah.
You can get more than one, technically.
And I get shiny. Look at that. Good. So, hold them busted. And you hop this.
Yeah, look at that. If you're going to be play weapon attack plus 2, this is just
6 damage off a
casual
stick.
6. Yeah.
Just crack them, but you gotta get the counter. And yeah, so I like him. You has a little side deck you upgrade, and it's just completely different. I think that it's time to wrap this up. Any other closing thoughts about Pocket Paragons?
I think that I do truly believe, as a fighting game enthusiast, to me it hits a lot of the weird itches that come out that you get in fighting games. Like I said, mix-ups. Even having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buttons in a way, just the 6 cards.
Yeah.
It invokes it. I always put the cards out like that exact same order so I can read it, and having a super little supers, the ultimate stuff like that. But then again, it's about mix-ups. There's the threat of getting knocked out real fast, all that stuff, and then it's a fast game. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it takes a while, but usually it's fast. That's what I really enjoy about it. So I think people, when they play it, will definitely see that. And if they're fighting game enthusiasts, they will feel it. It's it feels like it. My opinion. I played a few games, so I know.
Yeah, I think because the game is so short, it really plays into that. Oh, I lost. Let's just go again. That really helps. It doesn't really feel that bad to lose, and
Let's practice it.
yeah, oh no, I got executed. Okay, go again. Oh, I am playing a fighting game and I just got comboed, 10-hit comboed Tekken style and I lost. Okay, go again. If you're playing a 2-hour game and you just get the crap beat out of you, it feels bad.
30 minutes in, you're going to lose. That feels worse.
Yeah, but games that you don't feel bad when you lose, that's kind of a rare thing, and I really like that about this game. I mean, I guess I'm tooting my own horn here, but
no. It's said. Some people have said you should never. Losses are learning experiences.
Yeah.
When you're playing those fighting games, they really said it. But
Yeah, and usually you can point to oh, if I hadn't done this, I would have won, and it's in your hands,
Yeah. Even against the same person.
Yeah.
Then you learn how that person plays.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you, Brian, for joining us for this Pocket Paragons chat.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you.